Welcome to Libertarian Counterpoint. I am your host, James Just. With me today is my friend of the show, Mr. John Cameron. And John, what are the books you're author of again? I always forget.
Rewire and Rekill.
Rewire and Rekill.
You can get them on the major online bookseller as ebooks, so you don't have to kill any trees, ladies and gentlemen. I can't mention the price or anything because then they'll have to cut this section out. Yeah.
Are those libertarian?
Well, they're.
I'm curious. Yeah, I haven't actually read them yet. I'm a terrible host. I'm a terrible friend. John.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, friend. No, you're a good friend. They're both pretty anti-government and pretty. Anti-crony socialism, and talk about corruption and misuse of the government and influence, and how right-thinking people, not leaning to the right, get steamrolled but somehow fight back. And you'll like it. There's a lot of action.
See, I'm a boring though. I'm a fan of Asimov. He's my anti-government writer.
Yeah.
As a Asimov.
Oh, all of the early science fiction writers. Well, Heinlein could have written Ayn Rand could have written Atlas Shrugged way better than Ayn Rand ever did. I needed a heavy edit, man. 500 pages could be missing from that thing. It'd be a better book. Still a great book.
Well, we're talking about
we just killed 3 minutes of the show.
I don't know how we got onto that, but
you asked. Don't ever ask an author. I'll tell you my favorite author joke.
Okay.
All right. No. I'm tired of talking about my book. Let's talk about you and how you feel about my book.
Well, let's talk about how, what is it, Fitch feels about the U.S. credit rating.
That. Yeah.
Because the U.S. credit rating has been downgraded. And the media's kind of portraying this as a sign of the debt deal the debt ceiling debate, right?
That's all they're portraying.
That's all the media's trying to portray it as. But the reality is, it's $32 trillion of debt projected to $51 trillion now?
It was 14, slightly over 10 years ago. Now it's 32 trillion. But can we talk a minute about how the media is pitching this Fitch says? Folks, ladies and gentlemen, where's the camera? I should know this.
You got that one there?
Hello, camera. Let me wink at it. So if you Google text of Fitch downgrade. Maybe not on Google, you might not find, but if you use any reputable search engine, you'll find it. It took me a while because it was buried underneath what they wanted me to see. The Fitch downgrade is probably a couple thousand words long, and it goes into economic speak about GDP and debt to GDP and debt to GDP growth and all the rest of that. It starts out talking about the dysfunctional way that we have to raise the debt ceiling and it takes negotiation to do that. And that's probably maybe 40 words of the 2,000 words. And then it goes directly into the U.S. doesn't have a medium, unlike other it didn't use the word civilized countries, it doesn't have a medium-term plan to do anything about growth in government spending and the inability of the U.S. government to raise revenue to cover its spending. They talked about tax cuts as being a bad thing, and we know that tax cuts are actually a good thing. So there's also a little bit of e.g. whatever bias in Fitch because they want to, not be regulated out of business. But what they talk about over and over and over again is that we're spending way more than we're bringing in revenue. We're not doing anything to rein in what we call entitlements, and they're not entitlements. The only thing you're entitled to is your property and your ability to work and breathe. That's your only entitlements. The idea that you should get a $3,400 a month check just because you're alive at age 70, that's not an entitlement. But we're doing nothing about Medicare spending and Social Security spending, and it keeps growing and growing, and nobody will do anything about it. There was some good news in that, we have, the U.S. has a vibrant economy. There's very little corruption compared to the rest of the world, which lets you know how corrupt the rest of the world is, folks.
Yeah, no kidding.
But over and over and over again, what Fitch talked about was debt. When you have 14 trillion in debt, and now we have 32, just to let you know how bad it is, folks, if you were alive and listened to the news, was it 14 years ago, 10, 12 years ago? Remember when Greece was getting just hammered by the monetary funds and world opinion and everything because they mismanaged their economy so bad, they had a huge amount of national debt compared to their GDP. We're worse than Greece was 14 years ago, and we're the mighty economy, the biggest economy in the world. We can't even balance a freaking checkbook.
Yeah. Well, we want to complain about the debt ceiling debate, which is fine, but if you deal with the debt, there's no debt ceiling debate.
No.
So I don't even care about the debt ceiling debate.
No, I want the debt ceiling debate to be something like this. We're not going to have a debate. What we're going to do is balance the budget and pay the debt down, and in 20 years we won't have any debt. Because if you made the decision to cut government spending to the bone, cut deeper than that. Cut into the marrow, because all these programs are just, basically moving money. It's a shell game to pay political contributions anyway.
Well, and how much of our budget is debt service? That's just money we're flushing down the toilet at this point.
10% now, and it's going to go up to 30%.
Yeah, we're going to be spending money on.
That's like people going on vacation when they got credit card debt.
Yeah.
And this country's been going on vacation with credit card debt for 50 years, but really the last 20 have been the killer. And nobody's had Mellon, the Mellon fortune was the last good Treasury Secretary who wanted to do something about it, and he did. And then FDR came in and booted him out, and we know how that ended. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Richard, our reporter from the field, has a discussion about Seigniorage, or essentially the creation of money and what that does to our economy and why.
And why you need to create money to facilitate trade and interaction. There's a need for it.
So let's see what Richard has to say.
I would love the end here.
Seigniorage, the creation of money to facilitate trade, is one of the most important inventions of all time. Reduced to its essence, money is an accounting system which makes it possible to ascertain who owns what and how much of it. To work, money needs to be fungible. It needs to be readily acceptable by sellers of stuff. To be readily acceptable, it needs to maintain a modicum of stability in value in relation to stuff. If an apple sells for $1 today and $10 tomorrow, it loses that stability and becomes undesirable as a store of value and as a medium of exchange. But if $1 buys an apple today and $1.02 buys a similar apple a year from now, that's close enough so that most folks won't notice. Never mind that it means that $1 loses half its value in about 36 years. This is called seigniorage. It's why governments and/or bankers have always insisted on having a monopoly on the creation of money and guarding that monopoly with their life. It gives the sovereign, whether it's a king, an emperor, or a government banking hybrid like the Federal Reserve, the power to create a little extra money for itself. If a king mints gold coins alloyed with 2% base metals and buys stuff for the kingdom as if they were 100% gold, the kingdom gets 2% more stuff. It's effectively an invisible tax on the king's subjects. Likewise, if the Fed increases the number of dollars in existence simply by creating them out of thin air and lending them to the federal government, it allows said government to buy stuff at a 2% discount. An honest sovereign or an honest federal government would simply levy a tax yielding the same amount of money as 2% inflation does. But who ever heard of an honest king or an honest government? The goal of most kings, emperors, and central banks is to inflate just enough money to make it worthwhile, but not so much that the subjects will notice and look for alternative forms of money. Hence the 2% Fed target. Sometimes governments get greedy and counterfeit like crazy. Think Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, or Argentina. That usually, eventually leads to regime change of one form or another, often not for the better. Think Nazi Germany. It always leads to the eventual downfall of the empire. Think Rome. Or it leads to a change in which empire predominates. That may be where we are now. Post World War II, the United States took over the empire role from Great Britain. The dollar, legally linked to gold, and replaced the pound as the world's reserve currency, the form of money used to settle balance of payments between countries engaged in trade with one another. When the link to gold was severed by Nixon in 1971, a new link was established by Henry Kissinger. The link was an agreement with Saudi Arabia. If they agreed to price their oil in dollars, we agreed to support their feudal government. We went from a gold standard to a de facto oil standard. It worked well for nearly 50 years. But as a country, we've gotten greedy, lazy, and less productive. We thought it would be cool to trade our counterfeit dollars for Chinese manufactured goods and hollowed out our industrial infrastructure. We bought into the defense industry claims that we needed to spend obscene amounts of money to fight off first the commies in the Cold War, and when that went away, a new enemy, jihadists with box cutters. Next was a flu bug roughly as severe as the 1968 flu, which no one remembers. Next enemy, the weather. Meanwhile, we bought off those who vote, mostly retired people, with generous socialized medicine and retirement benefits. Think Medicare and Social Security. Unfortunately for the government, they got a little too greedy and pushed up the inflation rate from 1 or 2% to double digits. Now people who can read the writing on the wall are urgently putting money into gold and cryptocurrencies to protect themselves from the depreciation of their dollars. And it's not just our citizens. The rest of the world noticed when the Biden administration confiscated reserves from Russia's central bank as part of its proxy war in Ukraine. The rest of the world has noticed. Later this month, the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are having a little confab in South Africa. On the agenda, a new BRICS currency linked to gold. They have a waiting list of other countries who would like to join. If the United States dollar loses its role as the currency for settling international trade balances, which looks more and more likely, the dollar becomes just another banana republic scrip currency, barely worth the paper it's printed on. The end of Pax Americana or the American Empire may be coming a little faster than the elites are expecting.
Well spoken, Fields. Well spoken. I like the beard too.
The end consumer pays all costs, and the trick that the monetary theorists, the monetary policies, and the politicians who them have is that you're not paying the cost, that someone else is paying the costs. That's the trick. That's the lie. And you know, at some point, we all of us, those of us here on the
10 staffel. This thing is free lunch.
yeah, you're all paying for it. You're just who's paying for it? You're paying for it immediately. You're paying for it down the road.
You never know when because you know Rome lasted an awfully long time after they started debasing their currency, but they didn't have compound interest back then. So compound interest will kill you, folks. It'll make you rich if there's not inflation. And you know,
Well,
we got that right now.
And they found that they can use monetary policy to manipulate not just the economy but the culture. And you get activists in the realm of politics, and they have the desire to control is it's inherent in activism.
Yeah, they have the desire to control, and no ability to lead, and refuse to be held accountable. Those three things in combination are deadly. Yeah.
Well, talking about a deadly combination, probably deadly is probably the wrong word for this one, but the Trump election.
Highly amusing.
It's highly amusing. This Trump indictments, he's facing a couple more indictments this week.
I'm shocked by that.
Yeah, I'm shocked. I actually don't care that Trump's been indicted. I just care all the people who have been doing similar things and haven't been indicted is my problem.
Right.
I have no problem with them going after Trump.
Again, I'm not I'm of the same mind as Malcolm X about white liberals, and they're the greatest enemy of the black race. I think they're the greatest enemy of all races. Trump's an idiot, and he's an egomaniac, and he's a liar, and according to either Penn or Teller, which one talks? Is it Penn or Teller?
I think it's Penn.
Penn. Yeah, he says he's a liar and he's crazy, and he knows him pretty well. But is he any worse than the other clowns? I mean,
this is what gets me. They're complaining about Trump's election lies get him indicted, but the media complaining about election lies is hilariously hypocritical. It's so hypocritical that I can't even take them seriously anymore.
And I'm really confused. But so they got him indicted, but they've MSN's we do actual homework. Hopefully, all of our thousands of viewers out there are loyal viewers over the last 35 years,
something like that.
Yeah. We do homework and we try to look at both sides of the argument. So there's two sides out there that, one side, especially the lib folks and all the lamestream press, which is basically all the press, say that, Trump is a whore and a monster, and, he tried to overthrow the government, and he needs to, if he's a bad man, he needs to go to jail. The opponents to that, which is over 60% of the population, believes that, and this doesn't matter whether they hate Trump or love Trump. There's like 50% of the population loves the man because he's anti the coastal elites, and they know they're the people that have ruined the country. He doesn't have the right answer, but at least he's against them. Think that all of this stuff, or that a majority of the attempts to raid his house and all the other stuff that's going on are politically motivated. And anybody that steps back from it, I think, would absolutely agree it's politically motivated, because the other side's guilty of, Obama and Hillary and that whole gang, and Joe Biden all sat in a room and came up with this, let's create this phony dossier from a Russian spy saying that Trump's colluding with the Russians to try to control the election, when they were Biden was actually colluding with people to fill his pocket. So, he's a lunatic, and probably crazy, but a lot of this stuff is politically motivated. It's all true, basically.
It's the problem. We got the second point, is unwarranted charges. A group of people feel this is unwarranted charges and talk about a two-tier justice system. And whether the charges are unwarranted or not is an open question, but it does demonstrate a two-tier justice system. We remember where the FBI came out and said Hillary broke the law, but we're not going to charge her, as if the FBI is the one who's supposed to be making the decision to charge her or not. They should have sent it to the Department of Justice, who should have convened a grand jury, and the grand jury should have made the decision to charge or not, right? That's how the process should have gone, which is what they did with Trump, right? That's how they did it. And so they should have done the same thing with Hillary Clinton, but somehow the FBI decides for them it wasn't worth it. And we had, remember, it wasn't too long ago, where Bernie Sanders supporters sued the Democrat Party for manipulating the election. During the trial, they essentially admitted, yes, we did, but we have the right to. And the judge said, yes, you're correct. They did manipulate the elections. They did lie to you while taking your money, but they have the right to. So when these same people come here and say, well, you shouldn't try to manipulate the elections, manipulating elections is wrong, democracy and all that, I can't believe a word any of them say. I can't believe a word any of the right says. I can't believe a word any of the left says. None of these people actually believe a dang thing that they're saying.
No. If they believed it, they would say it with more conviction.
Well, I try to, for those of us, we try to hold those on our side of the issue, to a higher standard than we hold people on the other side, right? You want your side to be better.
Morally, you want to stand on the moral high ground.
Right.
And here they're both in the moral equivalent of the Mariana Trench, or Death Valley. They're on the moral low ground. Both of the parties, they have been. I mean, you know, you just look at how really the moral fiber of the political process in this country. If you want to talk about something that's degraded, I don't think people are any lazier. I don't think there's more hate. I think it's in the best interest of political parties to convince you that there's more hate. You know, I mean, they throw out statistics about there being 250 mass shootings in a year, and what they don't tell you is that all but about 3 of them are drug gang related inner warfare between competing drug gangs. But because a number of people got shot, they call it a mass shooting. So it's make you afraid, make you angry, you'll vote for that. But when everybody is making everybody afraid and angry, what's happening is American populace, bless you, is getting tired of this. They just don't want to be lied to anymore by anybody. They don't want to be felt as if they're pawns for the military-industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industrial complex, the homeless industrial complex,
Yeah, I think more and more people are starting.
More and more complex.
I want to interrupt you because I want to get to this. We've only got like 5 minutes, and I want to make sure.
This is important.
And I want to get to this last one. This was one of these things that is important to libertarian, specifically.
Yeah.
The
You're
Backpage.
right. Thanks for cutting me off, because this probably should have led, I think.
Yeah, the Backpage founder, James Larkin, has passed away. He committed suicide, which you know you can actually argue he was driven to suicide. And I think John.
At age, was he 80 or 70?
I think it was 70.
Oh, but I'm 70. Loud to camera, and this man looked like he was about 90, and he was a lover of liberty. He was a hardcore libertarian. He created a string of alt weeklies that did great reporting. I think they won some Pulitzers, which now you can only win if you're, you know, to the left. Right-wing publications can't win Pulitzers. And he did great work. And one of the best things he did was create Backpage, right? Backpage?
Backpage.
And that was a website where people could offer personal services. And they went after him for, you know, child, what is it called? Child sex trading or something. And he never did it. He fought against it. He was a champion against it. He opened his books up to say didn't do it. But they went after him, and if I remember correctly, the lunatic that's now the Vice President of the United States had a big part in taking him to court and ruining them financially.
Yeah, they don't even have to convict. They don't even have to convict you to ruin you.
Well,
right?
no, they basically used asset forfeiture to take all of his millions of dollars he created. He created wealth and jobs all over the place. And there's one thing, I want to let you talk, and then I want to talk about one thing that nobody talks about Backpage that was marvelous, that went away when Kamala and her crazy gang of people went after him. But I know you've got some things you want to talk about with it.
Not necessarily. I just think that for those of us in the world of liberty, these people who are willing to stand up and speak and stand in the face of that kind of pressure, the kind of assault on their liberties from the government, you know, and are willing to do that, they pay a high price. And that high price is not just in wealth, it's in your family, it's in your relationships.
And he's a wonderful family man. What people remember about him most is how much he loved his family. And he had like 7 kids or something.
And you know, and that's what strikes me is in these things is that a man was essentially pushed to suicide because the government didn't like his view on freedom, and I think that's something that all of us need to take a little bit of stock
not
with.
only did he view freedom, he acted on freedom.
Yeah. He did something that, in ways that people like me, we can't. I don't have the Constitution to do that. So, you know, I do this. I don't have the strength for that, and so and
it killed him.
It
Basically,
literally killed
yeah.
him. And, you
I
know,
mean, driving someone to suicide is murder.
Should be.
I think somebody needs to be convicted of this murder, and I'll put Kamala Harris first on that list.
well, the government is never held responsible for that, are they?
Well, this is the thing I want to cover, and you
got 2
might
minutes,
call it
John.
rant. So, what Backpage did was, and he said flat out, look, prostitution is personal service. You know, as long as somebody's not being shanghaied into prostitution or forced to prostitute themselves, if they want to offer, you know, their personal services, it's no different than dentistry or a massage or, I don't know, cleaning your carpet. You're just using your body to provide a personal service, and it's done all the time. I mean, that's what athletes do when they compete, is they put their bodies on the line and provide a personal service to make a great living.
That's what a computer programmer does.
Yeah.
You're renting your mind.
Yeah. So what happened, and this is the thing people don't talk about, is because of Backpage, pimps were out of work. And I firmly believe that's the reason why they went after Backpage so viciously, because pimps have the ability to hand money to people too, because they took a fiendish cut from these mostly women, and that cut disappeared. Because if you have the right to control your marketing and who your clientele is, and arrange to meet them in a hotel room somewhere, you don't need a pimp, right? And pimps disappeared, but now pimps are back. And if you ask any emergency room physician about the statistics of beatings of prostitutions and murders of prostitutes years ago when Backpage was on and now, and they'll tell you statistically that pimps are back. And so it performed a huge service, and I'm done talking about pimps.
Well, that is the danger of these policies, right? They try to implement a policy claiming to be morally high ground, to have the moral high ground, but yet they don't weigh the consequences of that policy, right? You say sex work is immoral, so we're going to make it illegal. Okay, but is sex work more immoral than what actually happens? Is it more immoral than pimps pimping out young women rather than these women working for themselves? Is it?
They hate entrepreneurs, man.
The state doesn't like the state. Those who like control don't like you being free.
No, don't like you creating the terms of your own employment and creating a way to drive income for yourself. You got to work for somebody else.
And I know, as a freelancer here in California, as a gig worker, we experience that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, John, for being here.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for watching.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank Access Sacramento for having us. And please remember to love everybody, and good night.
Yeah, thanks so much for watching, folks. I appreciate it. And have a wonderful evening.